You did not see it coming. One day everything felt, if not perfect, at least stable. You were in it. You were trying. And then something shifted, and you could not name what it was. Maybe he became distant. Maybe the warmth drained out of his voice. Maybe he stopped reaching for you the way he used to. You told yourself he was stressed. You told yourself it would pass. You found 100 reasons to explain the coldness, and every single one of them centered on something you could fix. Then he left. Not always with a dramatic speech. Sometimes with one. Sometimes with nothing at all. Just a door that closed and a silence that swallowed everything you thought you knew. And now you are sitting in the wreckage of something you cannot explain, wondering what you did wrong, wondering why it feels like grief for something that was never quite real. This video is about what the discard actually is. Not the story you were told. Not the version where you were not enough. The real psychological mechanics of why a covert narcissist leaves, and what it tells you about everything that came before. The word discard is not an accident. It is the term used in narcissistic abuse psychology because it captures something clinical and precise. The moment a narcissist decides that a person they have been using no longer serves a function, and removes them. Not breaks up with them, removes them. That distinction matters enormously, because when you understand that the discard is a functional decision, not an emotional one, the entire dynamic begins to make sense in a way it never has before. Here is the core truth. A covert narcissist does not leave because something went wrong. They leave because something went right for them. The relationship, from their internal experience, had a purpose. It was supplying something. Validation, control, emotional regulation. A mirror that reflected back the image of themselves they needed to see. When that supply degrades, when you stop being perfectly responsive, when you begin to push back, when the dynamic requires more effort than it returns, the narcissist begins a quiet, internal calculation you are completely unaware of. They do not announce this. They do not process it with you. They simply begin to disengage. And here is what makes the covert narcissist's discard so particularly devastating. It is almost never sudden on their side. It only feels sudden to you. Weeks or months before the discard is finalized, the covert narcissist is already leaving. Not physically, emotionally, psychologically. They are withdrawing investment while maintaining just enough surface presence to keep you attached, and to avoid the confrontation they do not want. This is the phase the victim remembers as confusing, because it was designed to be. The warmth becomes intermittent. The attention becomes unpredictable. You find yourself working harder for the same response you used to receive effortlessly. You try harder. You become more careful. And all of that effort, all of that straining to reconnect, is actually the supply the narcissist is harvesting in this final phase. Your anxiety, your attempts to restore what you had, your willingness to contort yourself. That is fuel. By the time the discard arrives, you are running on empty. They are not. This is not an accident. It is the structure of the dynamic, even if the narcissist has no conscious awareness of operating this way. The covert narcissist often does not experience themselves as strategic. They experience themselves as someone whose needs are not being met, who has simply grown apart from you. That narrative, the one where they are the dissatisfied party drifting towards something better, is the story that protects them from ever having to examine what they actually did. One of the most painful features of the narcissistic discard is the absence of a real explanation. You may have been given words, but if you examine those words now, truly sit with them, you will find they explain nothing. I need space. I have lost feelings. I think we want different things. You deserve someone better. These are not explanations. They are exit scripts, prepackaged phrases that perform the function of closure without actually providing any. A real explanation would require the narcissist to examine their own behavior, to account for the withdrawal, to acknowledge what they took and what they withheld. Real honesty would shatter the self-image they have spent the entire relationship protecting. So instead, they deliver a verdict. Calm, certain, final, and they leave you holding every question they refuse to answer. The confusion you feel after the discard, that relentless loop of what happened, what did I do? What could I have done differently, is not weakness. It is a completely rational response to being given a conclusion without any of the information that would make it make sense. You are not confused because you are broken. You are confused because you were given a puzzle with half the pieces removed. This is the part that is hardest to sit with. While you are in the aftermath, replaying conversations, examining your own behavior, grieving something you cannot fully name, the covert narcissist has often already moved on. Not because they are heartless in the way we imagine a villain to be, but because their emotional architecture does not produce grief the way yours does. They do not mourn the loss of you. They mourn briefly the loss of what you provided, and they are already moving toward a replacement source. The speed of this is one of the most destabilizing things a victim encounters. How can someone leave a relationship you shared and show no sign of pain? How can they be out with people, laughing, present, seemingly lighter, while you can barely function? The answer is that they were never as emotionally present in the relationship as you were. You were all in. They were managing an asset. When the asset is gone, there is loss, but it is the loss of a resource, not the loss of a person they genuinely loved. That is not something you did wrong. That is something they are incapable of. Here is where clarity begins to live, if you can stay with this long enough to let it land. The discard does not mean the relationship meant nothing. It means the relationship was never what you believed it to be. You brought real feeling into that dynamic. Real effort. Real vulnerability. That was all genuine. The question is not whether your love was real. It was. The question is what was on the other side of it. And the discard, with all its coldness, its confusion, its absence of real explanation, answers that question more honestly than anything the narcissist said during the relationship itself. A person who is capable of genuine love does not leave without accountability, does not disengage without honesty, does not end something real without some form of grief. The way someone ends a relationship tells you everything about how they were inside it. The discard is painful, but it is also, and this takes time to fully see, a form of information. The clearest signal you will ever receive about who you were actually dealing with. One of the most insidious effects of the narcissistic discard is what it does to your sense of self. Because the narcissist left without real explanation, because the relationship ended without resolution, your mind does what minds do. It tries to find the cause, and in the absence of external information, it turns inward. You begin to audit yourself. You begin to wonder if you were too much or not enough. Too emotional. Not interesting enough. Too needy. The list of possible failings is endless because the real explanation was never provided. This self-audit is one of the most damaging legacies of the discard, and it is important to name it for what it is, a story you have constructed to fill a gap the narcissist left deliberately. Your grief is real, but it is not evidence that you were wrong, broken, or at fault. It is evidence that you cared deeply about something, and that something was taken from you in a way that was not fair and was not kind. Grief and fault are not the same thing. The intensity of what you feel is not a measure of how much you failed. It is a measure of how much you gave. Recovery from the narcissistic discard does not begin with forgetting. It does not begin with anger, though anger may come, and it is allowed. It begins with a very quiet, very difficult shift in perspective. From what did I do wrong, to what was actually happening here. That shift is not instant. It does not arrive fully formed. It comes in fragments, moments of clarity that break through the confusion, followed by moments where the old story reasserts itself and the self-blame returns. But every time you return to what you now understand about this dynamic, every time you hold what you know about how covert narcissists operate, the fog thins a little more. You were not discarded because you were not enough. You were discarded because the system you were inside had already decided your function and had already begun looking for what came next. That is not a reflection of your value. That is a reflection of their limitation. And that limitation was never yours to fix. If what you have heard today has put language to something you have been carrying, something that never quite made sense until now, then you are exactly where this channel is built for. Every video here decodes one specific behavior, one specific tactic, one specific pattern, so that you can stop questioning yourself and start seeing clearly. And if you want to understand how the discard connects to the very beginning, how a covert narcissist secures their hold on you long before they are ever ready to leave, then the next video is essential viewing. It decodes love bombing, the intense, consuming rush of attention and affection that marks the earliest stage of these relationships, and exactly how a covert narcissist uses it to establish the attachment they will later exploit. That video is coming next. Do not miss it.